There's nothing like going straight to the source to see if there's a real problem.
Here at the Blanchard River, we're going to do some water quality tests and then we'll compare them to what we've done down at the Rocky Ford and see which one's healthier.
Of course, I've got to look at the pH, too. The pH scale tells me how acidic the water might be. A pH of 7 is neutral, which means right in the middle. But once it starts creeping towards 0, more acid enters the scene. Too much acid could send this river to the big sleep.
So we're going to start with the pH test. So I need to rip off a little strip, and I'm going to get my color comparator ready so I can see what color my strip turns. This goes in the water for about 1 second, just like when we do our pH test in class. And then I want to find the color that matches what my strip turned, all right? Might be like a 7.
One last clue I've got to check out: dissolved oxygen. Low amounts of dissolved oxygen in water could mean a watery grave for animals that live here.
So I have my sample container. I'm again going to rinse it so that I get out any old water that was in there, any old tests or contaminants. So I'll rinse it and empty it a couple of times and then fill to the 25 milliliter mark, which is almost at the top. The next step is to find an ampule. These are glass containers that come pre-filled with the reagent, and they're in the test box. They're pretty nifty, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really excited about them. I'm gonna come a little closer so you can see this part real up close. So this is an ampule, and we want to stick it in with the skinny end and into like one of these corners. If you look really closely, you can see there's little divots here at the bottom of the container. So you're gonna stick your ampule down in one of the little divots, and then you're gonna snap like that. And what you couldn't see because my fingers were in the way, but it filled up inside of there, okay? So it took my sample water and filled it up in there with the water that had been in the stream, and now it's reacting. So I'm gonna remove it. And we're going to flip it up and down a couple of times slowly because we don't want that bubble to interact with the water. We just want it to move the water and the reagent around so that they get mixed together and can react pretty nicely. All right, nice. And then we have to wait 2 minutes for this test to react. Something that I didn't tell you about when I was getting the water is that you don't want to make a lot of bubbles inside of there because we're looking at dissolved oxygen, and you know there's oxygen in the air all around us. So if I get bubbles into my sample of air, it's going to change the amount of oxygen that's in this little sample that's not in the rest of the river because it's not being disturbed. Do you see how nice and clear that is? I don't have any like bubbles on the sides forming. You want to make sure your sample is as undisturbed as possible. Okay. All right, so our last job here is to find the color that matches our sample. So we're gonna hold it up and pick the one that matches the best. Oh, I'm feeling like it's probably closest to an 8. So we would record that our dissolved oxygen in parts per million or milligrams per liter is 8 for the Blanchard River. Okay. Our next test is the carbon dioxide test. So when I get in here, I'm going to find the little bottle. My directions tell me to rinse with a sample, so I'm going to get out any contaminants or old water that are in there, and then I'm going to fill it to the 5 milliliter mark, which is the first line here on the bottle. So give me a second to do that. I don't have a level surface to put it on and check the bottom of the meniscus, but close to 5 will be just fine. It's pretty close. The next direction says to add 1 drop of bottle 1. And I'm going to do that with the cap on. There's this little hole on the top, but I want to try to not get, oops, that's the wrong glass. I want to try to not get the bottle to touch the lid because I don't want that sample water to get into my reagent. So I'm going to kind of hold it up above and let the solution drip right in. There it goes. The next direction says to swirl, so I'm just going to hold it by the cap and wiggle it around. And if it turned pink at this point, my answer would be 0, but it's not, so I'm going to proceed with the directions. I now need to fill the syringe with the titration solution. So I have the syringe in the bottle. I started with the plunger all the way down, and then you pull it all the way up, just to make sure you have enough. And then I'm going to add 1 drop at a time, trying not to touch the pipette tip to the lid again. So I'll do 1 drop, and then swirl, and it's still clear, and I'm going to keep going. So here's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, and then there we have it. There it turned pink. You see that hint of pink? That's good enough. Okay, so that was 6 drops, and then I'll use that to do the math and find out how many milligrams per liter of carbon dioxide were in the Blanchard River. It's important that we check the carbon dioxide, dissolved oxygen, and pH at the site because exposure to air over time can change those qualities of water. So we'll check those at the Rocky Ford in person. When we go down, we also want to see if there's any evidence of pollution or wildlife using the water, because that can give us an indication of the water quality as well. When we get back to the classroom, we'll check a few other tests as well.
First thing I check, turbidity. How cloudy is the water? The cloudier the water, the more there is to hide. I'm no hay eater, but I know that farmers need water and nutrient-rich fertilizer to grow their crops. But fertilizer runoff can be bad news for water. You get a couple of dark and stormy nights where the rain washes the nutrients into a river, and boy, oh boy, a whole bunch of bad stuff starts to happen. Algae starts to grow, and the next thing you know, the dissolved oxygen levels in the water go down. Fish need dissolved oxygen to breathe, and without it, the outcome could be curtains. Next order of business, cookies and milk. Time for lunch. I'll hand this off to you, junior water detectives.